The Full Melt Show is intended for a mature audience. It contains adult themes, adult content, and sometimes adult language. Listener discretion is advised.
It's the Full Melt Show.
Are you high? What are you talking about?
It's the Full Melt.
Give me a break.
The Full Melt Show. A marijuana discussion about news, culture, politics, and lifestyle. FullMelt.com. Toll free. 844-420-TALK. 844-420-TALK.
Hey there. Welcome to the Full Melt Show. Today is Wednesday. Wow, it's already the 17th of February. Is that what I'm reading? Am I right about that? I got to look now because I think it is the 17th of February. I'm just not sure. It seems like today's the 17th if memory serves. It is the 17th. Look at that. Can't believe how quickly time flies. Pretty soon it'll be sunshine and roses here in the northeastern part of the country, or at least in the Midwest. I guess we're considered part of the Midwest. Isn't that a strange term, by the way, Midwest? What the hell is that supposed to mean, Midwest? Midway to the West? I don't know. Somebody tell me what Midwest means, because it always confused me as a kid. I'm like, okay, so you got the East and you got the West. You got the Plain States. How are we the Midwest? Because I still don't get that. I don't think I ever got a social studies teacher to give me a correct answer on that question. So, what are we doing here now? What's going on? I'll tell you what's going on. It's a big political mess, isn't it? It's a shit pie. I mean, look at what we have going on here. We've got, okay, first off, we're in a presidential election year, right? That's the first thing we got going on. This is all related back to cannabis and medical marijuana. Those two subjects, along with hemp. You can't leave hemp out of the question when you're talking about this subject. This political cycle, I've been railing on for over a year now. I've been waiting for it for a couple of years now, anticipating it for some 4 years now. Will carry a big marijuana weight with it. It's inevitable. It's always been inevitable. It's been planned to a certain extent. We'll get into that at another day. That's too big of a bite for today. But in the meanwhile, just painting today's picture, the 17th of February, Wednesday, you've got this huge battle going on inside the Republican Party for control of that Republican nomination. Liar, liar, pants on fire, you're an ape. You know, it sounds like third grade class here. It really does. These candidates are acting like third graders on the Republican side. And I imagine it could get that kind of mudslingy if there were more people over on the Democratic side running for the Democratic ticket. It's been pared down to pretty much two. Is O'Malley still in the race even? I'm going to look that up now because I don't know the answer to that question, and I wish I did. Let me see. Is O'Malley in the? I don't want to do. I can't do it there because I used that on the show. Hang on a second. Service dog requirements. Da. All right, here we go. So, Martin O'Malley, is he still in the race? It's pretty bad when you got to ask your technical assistant Google what's going on in the world. And then you got to vet whether it's accurate information or not. So O'Malley dropped out February 1st, it appears. So I'm 3 weeks late to that game. This according to the New York Post. So that's why O'Malley hasn't been a part of the last Democratic debate. And you know, O'Malley had to step down because he was just so marginal with numbers. He's got name recognition now. Maybe you'll see him in the future. In the long run, you've got this short presidential race going on between what people want to call him communist. I would urge people who think that Senator Sanders is communist to look up the definition in economics. You got to look in economics because communism is not a form of government. It's a form of economics. It's economic system is what it is. Socialism is an economic system. Capitalism, this is all economics. It has nothing to do about dictatorship or anything like this. It's just about forms of government. And the difference between a socialist and a capitalist, a socialist and a communist are just as wide as the differences between a communist and a capitalist. I mean, they're different. They're very different. And the Republican parties particularly would like to label Senator Sanders as a communist. He's not. He believes in social ideals. He calls himself a progressive. And I agree with his leaning. Frankly, maybe I wouldn't if the country were a little more moderated, but you have to understand that this country has shifted right. Just in my lifetime, shifted way right. Because, just look at the way it's shifted. It shifted far to the right of what was norm or center even a couple of decades ago. It really started in the Reagan era. And then it started pushing right when people started gravitating around Reagan as if he was, planets orbiting around the sun. And I don't get that whole ideal anyways, because if you look, Reagan started as a Democrat. And then he didn't get this magical Republican reform going on until he started being paid by people who needed that voice. They needed a popular speaker, and they started paying him in California. And he became the governor there. And then when he ran for president, the big story was, who's going to hire an actor? And they did. And then forgot that he was an actor. I would hearken you back to when Nancy Reagan's just whispering stuff in the president's ear at press conferences. She had the answers. I don't think he was capable of forming them at that point. He just repeated them back with feeling. So you've got all this stuff going on. Left, right, center, all this crap going on. And then you throw marijuana at the wall and watch it splat. And everybody runs like you just let loose a stink bomb in there. This is quickly changing. And so now you have this idea that the presidential race has been heightened. It's been exacerbated by not only this splintering, this fractioning of the Republican Party, but then also on top of that, because you got, and the fracturing, by the way, the thing that's causing that fracturing and splintering has got two names. It's Donald and Trump. Because what's weird about Donald Trump is that he appeals to all the knee-jerk reactionists that are inside that umbrella, that tent, that tiny tent known as the Republican Party. And Trump wholesale took it over because he feeds to their need. These are low information people. People who are easily swayed. Look, I wouldn't be convinced by this buffoon if you paid me. Some of the stuff he says is just outlandish, and it's based clearly on practical inexperience with dealing with government. Seriously. So you've got this hammer breaking apart the Republican Party because the mainstream Republicans, the people who know how to get into office, are pissed off to the 9th degree over this man, Trump. Because they're having a really hard time just positioning themselves to capture the nomination. And you can't win the presidency unless you get the nomination. The problem is the two electorates are disjointed. In other words, you're only appealing to the Republican Party in getting that nomination, or people who you'd like to call Republicans, conservatives. There are not enough of them. They're not big enough as a party, as a majority anymore, because, let me look at Jeb Bush, George Bush's own brother. This is a guy who's been hiding under a rock for the past decade because of what he did to the government, what he did to our country. He was responsible for a terrorist attack and responsible for burying our economy under 10 tons of sand where nobody could breathe. He's not able to. He's actually asked his own brother to come back out and try and get mainstream conservatives back onto the Bush campaign. It's a losing venture. Right now, I'm just going to give you, and I'm not an investment advisor at all, so let me just disclaim that right away. But if you're the Koch brothers, I would say divest yourself of all investment into Jeb Bush. You might as well just take that money by the truckload and dump it into the river. Flush it right down the drain. Because you're not going to get anything out of Bush this season. It's not happening. As much as they'd like it to, it's just not going to do it. You still have Trump leading the pack. Will it be that way in South Carolina? Let's just see. Because it's going to happen real quickly here. Really quickly. It's a few short days away. And then on to Nevada. What's happening here is by taking over the Republican Party in the primary side, where he can appeal to just the core Republicans, and not mainstream Republicans, just people who consider themselves Republicans, who are these low-information, knee-jerk reactionists. If you've watched Comedy Central, you've watched a guy walk around in these crowds that follow Trump around and ask them simple questions about who they're following and what their politics are. The one guy thought he was going to get China to pay for the wall to Mexico. I mean, it's just really bad. It's easy to sway them over and talk them into stuff. This all leads to somewhere. Trust me, this leads somewhere. This isn't. I know this isn't the election show or the general politics show. It's not. But this all leads back to cannabis. Let me connect the dots. So you got Trump fracturing the Republican Party. You got this argument between two, what they each want to call themselves progressive. I beg to differ in the long run. I'm standing on the side of Bernie Sanders, even though I still think Hillary, even because I'm not a fan of Hillary. I don't like Hillary, but she clearly is the one most qualified in this race to take hold of the reins of the president. However, that being said, I think that there's not enough people in the general election who will stand behind her solidly, because she's created too much controversy in the time of her political career. Right from the time that she was that stand by your man lady with President Clinton. So you got this going on. You got this argument between these people, and I think in the long run you're going to settle out, and you might just see Bernie Sanders end up with the nomination on the Democratic side, and you got Donald Trump, the outsider, taking over the Republican Party. Given a choice between those two people, I honestly think Sanders will win. Just my research, just my opine. Remember, opinions are like a-holes. We all have one. But mine is at least an educated opinion. I mean, it's immersed in fact. It's got merit behind it. How does this tie? Where does the thread go? Well, let me just tell you that the Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, his passing gets this presidential race heightened, and it connects to pot.
You're getting the full melt.
When you need legal help, you don't want to guess at who's standing next to you in court. And when it comes to a medical marijuana defense, it's even smarter to partner with a lawyer before you need one. Based in Royal Oak, David Rudoy has a proven history of not being afraid to take your case all the way to the Supreme Court and win. Find the law offices of Rudoy Law
at RudoyLaw.com.
RudoyLaw.com is a quick reference on your rights concerning Michigan medical marijuana
and up-to-date news.
That's RUDOI Law.com. Call 248-935-9074 now and talk about your legal needs, because at RudoyLaw.com, we don't just stand up for you, we stand up with you.
RootMetrics, in the nation's largest independent study, tested wireless performance across the country. Verizon won big with 153 state wins. AT&T got 38, Sprint got 2, and T-Mobile got 0. Verizon also won first in the U.S. for data, call, speed, and reliability. AT&T got text. Stuck on an average network? Join Verizon, and we'll cover your cost to switch.
It's Steve Green for the Sweet Leaf in Flint, because now getting safe access to medical cannabis patients in Flint, Michigan is never more welcoming. Presenting the Sweet Leaf, a brand new patient experience, bringing 12 carefully selected caregivers housed in 9 separate offices to distinctly assist you with their knowledge and reputation for excellent patient care. Classes and training coming soon in the large community room. Check it out in person, 400 South Door Highway, or call 810-259-2571. The Sweet Leaf Center in Flint, 810-259-2571.
What's up with these things, Victor?
We decided to give ourselves stickers for each feature we release.
We read about 10,000 suggestions a week to create features that, as traders, we'd want to use.
10,000 suggestions? Who reads all of those?
He does.
For all the confidence you need, TD Ameritrade, you got this.
Introducing Sacred Elements, a place for natural and alternative healing for the mind, body, and soul. Sacred Elements. It's one place, all solutions.
Registered, licensed, certified, ordained.
Sacred Elements.
Massage, hypnosis, Reiki,
Sacred Elements.
raindrop, aroma and color therapy, body detox, ministry, life coaching, weight and nutrition counseling.
Sacred Elements. Next to the Sweet Leaf, 400 South Dort Highway, Flint.
11 to 7 daily, closed Sunday.
Call 810-259-2570. It's the Full Melt Radio Show.
Radio show.
So we painted a picture here about how the presidential election is underway with some strange circumstances that are changing the face of what's going on in American politics in such ways that not even the best political talking heads can figure out what these tea leaves mean. They're trying to read the tea leaves, but it's all Greek to them because there are way too many variables in play in this particular election cycle that will tilt the scale given any one direction of the wind changing. And that wind could change at any given time. So nobody's willing to stick their neck out. I'm sticking my neck out a little bit. I'm just going to make the prediction. I think Bernie Sanders is getting the Democratic nomination. I think Donald Trump is likely to end up with the nomination for the Republican Party. And then you're going to see this question of Bloomberg come into the mix. So Bloomberg, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. He's a wealthy, you know who Bloomberg is. He was a former governor, state of New York. Was it governor? Was he also at one point? Wasn't he the mayor of New York City? What? No, I don't know. See, now I'm going to look like an ass because I got to look it up. Bloomberg. Let's just explore the Bloomberg because he could be another question here that's got problems attached when it comes to this election cycle. And this is why people don't want to make any predictions. Nobody's making those predictions anywhere. Bloomberg, but no, I don't want Bloomberg.com. No. Looking up Bloomberg's political history. There we go. Michael Bloomberg. So he was New York City's. I was correct. In office. 81 to 2001. See, I'm not a New York guy. I can't speak with a New York accent. I can't talk like the New Yorkers. I'm not a tough guy. I'm not your I'm not a Chris Christie. I love the New Jersey Weed Man for picking on the Chris Christie all the time. Boy, that's a thorn in one guy's side that's never going to get removed. They're going to still be trying to pry the Weed Man from New Jersey out of the side of Governor Christie's ass when he's in his box being ready to put into the ground. Seriously, and if he doesn't lose some weight, that day may come sooner than later. So he was a Democrat before 2001, became a Republican from 2001 to 2007. He's independent now. Ha. Talk about flip-flop. Talk about man of all, what's that? Jack of all trades, master of none. And New York City's mayor. There was never any government, never any governor connection there. CEO was, blah, blah, blah. Mayor of New York City, Bloomberg. Wealthier than Donald Trump. He might get into this mix as an independent, claiming the flag of the conservatives, and try and say, you know what, I'm the moderate answer to the Donald Trump nomination. I think that those things are in the cards. So part of what blows my theory out of the water is if Bloomberg gets involved as a write-in candidate, I don't even know how he could get on. He would have to be a write-in candidate, wouldn't he? How would he get involved in the presidential election cycle quick enough to get on the ballot? I guess there's still time to print all those ballots, isn't there? I think that's what they're thinking. Look, we'll go dollar for dollar up against Trump if he ends up taking the Republican nomination, because the mainstream Republicans believe wholeheartedly that Trump is not electable. In other words, it doesn't matter who he met up against in the general election, that Trump doesn't stand a chance. Now, he's proven a lot of people wrong up until now, but I don't think he can get around that hump. Honestly, I don't. He can buy his way into these, I'm going to call them what they are. They're bleeding heart Republicans. They're bleeding heart conservatives. Use their own term back on them, I guess. The knee-jerk people, the low-information people, the ones that are easily swayed inside that party, which is why Trump is likely to end up with that nomination if he keeps rolling like he is. I think he will sweep the table on the Republican ticket. The problem is the mainstream people that want to maintain control of government and both houses of Congress are trying to get back the president's seat for the Republicans, for the conservative party. Don't believe that that'll ever happen if Trump indeed takes the nomination, and it's looking more and more likely that he's going to. This is why you'll see people, at least Bloomberg, come in, and maybe somebody else. Can you imagine? There's a lot of people with money. Who else could get involved? I don't want to go through the list. Let's leave that ancillary detail to the future. How this ties in. So now you've got, on top of this, and why it makes it even more imperative that people in the Republican Party grasp even harder at the straws trying to get back the presidency, because you've got this death of the Supreme Court justice and this battle now about trying to extend into a president's term. Hillary Clinton said it best. What part of the president gets to nominate don't you understand? I mean, he's not the real president. Oh, his last year of his presidency doesn't count. Maybe the last few months. So from the summer months until the end of the year, traditionally they've said, no, let's wait until the new president comes on and then let's make a Supreme Court announcement. That's been standard fare for decades, centuries, in fact. But what's not been standard fare is that it's the beginning of the last year of the president's cycle. Are we going to allow ourselves to have a Supreme Court seat vacant that long because of questions like this? And that question is the marijuana question. It's just one of many that might be looming with a 4-4 decision at the Supreme Court. Now, how does marijuana play? What's at the Supreme Court with marijuana? Let me just tell you. The entire basis for legalization by states. That's what's at heart here. The death of Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia on Saturday is already having far-reaching repercussions into American politics, so says IB Times, which is the International Business Times. You can find them at ibtimes.com. So how will his death impact marijuana law? This is far from an absurd question. A pivotal lawsuit filed by Nebraska and Oklahoma to overturn Colorado's legalized marijuana program is scheduled to be considered by the court this Friday. Not tomorrow, but the next day. Scalia's missing vote could change the fate of the case that has the potential to dismantle the country's nascent legalized marijuana market. And thanks to the unique nature of the case, how the Supreme Court deals with the lawsuit in the absence of a ninth judge could have a lasting influence on the court's procedures to boot. Filed in December of 2014 by the Attorneys General of Nebraska and Oklahoma, the lawsuit in question asks the Supreme Court to overturn Colorado's 2012 law legalizing marijuana, arguing that neighboring states have faced increased criminal activity and other problems thanks to marijuana arriving from Colorado. The lawsuit also says Colorado's marijuana program violates the supremacy clause of the U.S. Constitution, which states that federal law, in this case the prohibition of marijuana, takes precedence over state statutes. That means if the Supreme Court agrees with the plaintiffs on this matter, medical and recreational marijuana regimes, not just in Colorado, but all over the country, could be invalidated. At a hearing this Friday. The decision wouldn't come then. It would come probably months later. Probably sometime midsummer, before the election. Oh, it gets really sticky, this wicket. It has the potential to be a big deal, said Sam Kamen. He is the marijuana law professor at the University of Denver. Conceivably, it could mean that the court finds that Colorado and every other state's regulations on marijuana are preempted by federal law and have to be annulled or repealed or can't be enforced. That's the gist of this. A victory for the plaintiffs could also reverberate far beyond marijuana policy. Think about that. Many believe such a decision would be a major blow for states' rights, which is why many conservative colleagues of the Republican attorneys general behind the suit are vocal critics of the effort. Plus, using the same legal arguments, the Attorney General of, say, California could sue Utah over its lax gun laws, arguing too many firearms are flowing into the Golden State. Kamen, though, says he has long believed the lawsuit against Colorado has little chance of succeeding. I've always thought the court isn't going to take it or dismiss it for lack of standing, he said. The plaintiffs can't show they could be helped by a positive decision in their favor. I mean, seriously, they've got no evidence to say that the plaintiffs can show that they wouldn't be helped if the court ruled in their favor. Even the U.S. government takes a dim view of the case. In December, the Solicitor General urged the Supreme Court to deny the lawsuit, as did President Obama. Many cases with shaky legal standing never make it to the highest court in the land, but the Supreme Court has to weigh in on this matter. It has exclusive jurisdiction over lawsuits filed by one state against another. That means there are no other lower court decisions, right? This is problematic. I'll get to that in a minute. It has exclusive jurisdiction, I say, over lawsuits filed by one state against another. If 4 judges vote to take up the case at the hearing this Friday, the lawsuit will move forward. How might Scalia have impacted this decision? Would he have been for or against the legal validity of Colorado's marijuana program? On one hand, the conservative justice was known as a staunch supporter of states' rights when it came to issues such as gun control and gay rights. He was also known to be critical of law enforcement overreach, including in marijuana cases. In a 2001 case, he concluded in the majority opinion that the use of thermal imaging devices in a marijuana bust constituted an illegal search without a warrant. He came to the same conclusion about drug-sniffing canines in 2013 on a cannabis case. But that doesn't mean he was supportive of state marijuana laws. When he was asked about clashes between state and federal laws over marijuana during a visit to Colorado in 2014, I'd love to have seen that. Wouldn't you like to have been a fly on the wall when Scalia's touring through Colorado? He responded, the Constitution contains something called the Supremacy Clause, potentially indicating he believed federal law trumped states' efforts. And in the 2005 case, Gonzalez versus Raich, Scalia concurred with the majority opinion that California's medical marijuana patient could be prosecuted by the federal government. Noting, he says, I agree with the court's holding that the Controlled Substances Act, or the CSA, may validly be applied to respondents' cultivation, distribution, and possession of marijuana for personal medicinal use. It's hard to predict where a given justice is going to come down on anything, said Tom Angel, a founder of the cannabis advocacy group Marijuana Majority, who analyzed Scalia's record on cannabis for marijuana.com. But my best guess is Nebraska and Oklahoma probably just lost one of their votes for granting the review. Even without Scalia's vote, it's possible 4 justices will agree to move forward considering the lawsuit. If that happens, the Supreme Court could be looking at a far more complicated scenario, and this is where it gets really sticky. With the political landscape suggesting a 9th justice won't be approved to replace Scalia anytime soon, it's possible the case could end in a 4-4 tie. Now, what does that mean? What happens then? Let me just tell you. Usually that means the lower court decision being appealed stands with no national precedent. But in interstate lawsuits, there are no lower court decisions. So now what happens? According to a 2009 article in the Yale Law Journal, the Supreme Court has only had to deal with so-called original jurisdiction deadlocks twice in history. The first time in 1870, the case remained up in the air for nearly 3 years. That's 1870. We're talking shortly after the death of President Lincoln. The second time in 1953, the court ruled one way, only to overrule itself a year later. Really? Unfazed by this troubled past, notes the Yale Law Journal article, the court remains unprepared for a future original jurisdiction deadlock. In other words, no one knows exactly what will happen if the Supreme Court takes up the Colorado lawsuit and then can't come to a majority opinion on it. There's no precedent. There's no dictation by the Constitution or otherwise which says what the court must do in that situation. How must the decision be held? There is no decision. It's deadlocked. That's why there are 9 justices. One option, notes the Journal article, could be that the deadlocked case remains unresolved, similar to the 1870 case, until a majority decision emerges, either through the appointment of a 9th justice or someone changing sides. Another option, according to the article, would be that the tie vote leaves the pre-existing legal landscape intact, meaning Colorado's marijuana law would stand. A final possibility could be that the court appoints a special master or legal expert to consider and issue recommendations on its matter. No matter which option the Supreme Court embraces in the event of a deadlocked vote on the Colorado marijuana program, it could have long-lasting legal implications. It really could. Let's just see how that could be. Do we have enough time for this? Oh, we're running short on time. I think we can do it, though. Lost place in the story. The story reset, so I've got to toggle back down to it. That's what ads do sometimes. It'll refresh the page and go back to the top. So, where's this at here? Legal. No matter which option the Supreme Court embraces in the event of a deadlocked vote on Colorado's marijuana program, it could have long-lasting legal consequences. Kamen, however, believes the Supreme Court won't have to consider any of these options. He says the complicated nature of considering such a case, plus all the hot-button issues that were already on the docket to be considered this term, make it unlikely the court will take up the lawsuit at all. Imagine that. A disabled court deciding that it's not going to take up a case because of its hot topic nature, and there's no possible resolution, or at least a possible resolution of no resolution. There's so much very, very high-profile stuff on the pause right now. My gut instinct is that they're going to say we don't need anything else on our plate. If the justices decide otherwise, however, the effort could shape both marijuana law and the Supreme Court for a long, long time to come. More on marijuana news and politics coming up after the break.
You're getting the full melt.
I've seen things no man should bear, and those that every man should dare. From the beaches of Normandy to the far reaches of the earth. In my life, I have lived millions of lives. I've outrun robots and danced with dinosaurs. I've faced the faces of fear and fortitude and witnessed great beauty in the making. I've kept the company of kings and queens, but I'm no royalty or saint. I've traveled, trekked, wandered, and roamed, only to find myself right where I belong.
Jeep. See your authorized Jeep retailer for details on how you can become a Jeep owner.
We asked people to tell us something that happened in their past and something that might happen in their future. The good things were put on yellow magnets and the bad ones on blue. The results show the past was a pretty even mix of good and bad, yet the future was almost all good things. Now that you've seen the results of this experiment, what does it mean to you?
We all want to think about positive stuff.
Realistically, there will be downtimes.
It's great to think optimistically, but let's plan for whatever the future might bring.
Prudential, bring your challenges.
If you're like us, your pets aren't just animals. They're members of your family. Pet Pain CBD hemp oil drops are great for aging as well as active dogs and cats. Some people are apprehensive about hemp treatments for pets. They ask us, what are you smoking? Absolutely nothing, and neither will your pet. Like other hemp-based products for humans, the allure is all of the benefits of cannabis without any of the high. The CBD oil has shown to rejuvenate the bones, joints, brain, stomach, eyes, and heart. And the drops contain absolutely no corn, wheat, soy, artificial colors and flavors, or preservatives. Pick some up today. Visit petpain.com. or ask for Pet Pain at your local pet store. PetPain.com. CBD relief for your pets.
It's the Full Melt Radio Show. Hey, can you imagine if Bloomberg got into the race and ended up becoming president? I mean, some people would welcome that. Other people might say, oh, no, you can't do that. I say it's all in the cards. Anything is possible. It gets really ugly when you let money control politics. And that's what our Supreme Court has previously done. Citizens United is the decision. I mean, would the court then, if let's say Obama nominates somebody and the Senate somehow is forced to reconsider its position on not allowing, and this is a good reason for it. The reason I just articulated, the idea that the court would be left with a 4-4 standing, so 8 justices on hot button issues, if they fall down party lines, and it seems like they probably will, they almost always do. In these hot button issues anyway, there's no tie-breaking vote. I mean, in the Senate, if this happens, you know who's the tiebreaker? It's the vice president. The vice president breaks the tie in the Senate because the Senate is composed of 100 senators. It's 50-50. If they end up on a 50-50 tie, the vice president is the one that breaks that tie. There's nobody to break the tie. There's nobody set out in the Constitution. And by the way, if the Supreme Court decided on its own, as one of the 3 branches of government, to fix this themselves by basically creating law, look, they're not entitled to create law. Somebody might sue them over that. If one of these other options, remember the option that the International Business Times suggested that is likely or possible in the event of a 4-4 tie in this Colorado situation or any other that it might face until it gets a 9th jurist. One of the options is to hire a special examiner. Now, what are the criteria for that? Seriously, what are the criteria for this special examiner? And who's the one that chooses? These are all questions that could be raised in court, I would suppose. But what court would hear them? And what final court would be decisionary on it? It's mind-boggling what could happen at this point. If Bloomberg did get in there, by the way, not in the Supreme Court, but in the president's office, I remember this is the guy that cleaned up New York City. This is the guy that turned what was X-rated, jerk-off booths and adult topless entertainment and bottomless entertainment and drug-laden backroom door. It's just terrible. It was terrible downtown in New York for decades. Walk down, what is it? Where's the... See, I'm not familiar with New York, so I don't know the streets. Walk down Main Street, New York, and I'm talking down there, what's the district where all that light... where do they do the ball drop? Right where the ball drop is at. Walk right through there in the mid-'70s and tell me what it looked like, and then walk through there now and tell me what it looks like. Bloomberg is the one responsible for that. And you know why they didn't do it before then? Because these people were all leaseholders. They all had property rights. Some of them owned these buildings. They were all zoned in, in previous zoning. Bloomberg came in there, rezoned everything, and kicked everybody out. And then sold that building to ABC, which they now have this big zipper, the big zipper banner around. It's where Good Morning America comes out of. It's their World News headquarters studio. And then you've got all the big giant light screens and all that stuff. All the X-rated porno crap came down and the giant big screens went up. And then you got the Disney store and all those other stores. I mean, I remember it was major news when it happened in New York. This is the kind of man that you'd be placing, and nobody's talking about him now. Nobody's talking about him yet. But I'm telling you, you're probably going to talk about him. Unless he decides not to run, and I don't think that that's in the cards. I think this man intends to run. But only if Trump takes the nomination. If Trump doesn't take the nomination and one of the other guys gets it, I think you'll see Bloomberg step aside. But I think he's the ace up the sleeve for the Republican Party, and he'd likely be successful, especially if, say, somebody like Bernie gets in there. Now you've got the traditional fight again. And you never know. I mean, anything could happen. But this business about the Supreme Court justice is a big problem. And this is why I think the Senate may be forced to reconsider its position on possibly confirming an Obama nominee to replace Justice Scalia. They might be forced by reviewing this with other law scholars and legal advice, constitutional scholars, to say, look, this is not an appropriate place to leave the government in. It's the duty of the president and then the duty of the Senate to both nominate and advise and consent on nominations. And historically, there have been very few people who didn't make it through that advice and consent, and only for very just cause. Until you got to Robert Bork, and that's another story for another day, too, because I don't even think we can tie the Bork. Getting borked is a whole coined phrase. I remember the Bork situation. It was highly publicized. I remember listening to it in my car on the AM dial in Lansing, Michigan, live. And I thought, wow, what an amazing thing. I'm listening right now to live stuff happening in Washington, D.C. It went on forever, it seemed. And that wasn't too long after that the Clarence Thomas thing with the pubic hair on my Coke can. He was eventually confirmed. Bork was not. And now this question of Justice Scalia, who everybody wraps around like he's the Reagan of the Supreme Court. I mean, he was a revered man. It was a well-respected man by just everyday common people. You know, I speak ill because he represents the place on the court that kept the pendulum of the court in too long in the same space. The government works best when it's in the middle. It doesn't work best when it leans left or leans right. It works best when it goes right down the middle. But it also is the most disabled by that dysfunction because I call it function yet dysfunction. Because that's what they do functionally. It's most functional when it's down the center. It's most beneficial to the populace when it's down the middle. But you get the left or the right twisting government one way or another, and things get terrible for certain people. And usually the poor and disabled and the most disadvantaged in our country. Social safety net tends to go away. Frankly, it's been put to me that by a great many friends say, look, if Bernie Sanders gets in there, he should do an FDR thing. He should do a public works project. Remember public works, FDR? I mean, he created the nation's highways through this plan. And this was in a time where the nation had gone through terrible recession and depression. FDR came in and cleaned it up by hiring American workers to build American products, the roads and highways and the infrastructure of this great land of ours. It included things like telephone and telegraph. It also included things like electricity distribution. That infrastructure, it's that old. It needs to be repaired now, all of it. The Flint water crisis is just a tiny snippet of all this. It's just a peek. It's just a nose under the camel's tent with regards to the corruption that has left our cities barren and hollow in way of infrastructure. If you look at the federal highways, they're not too bad. It's the local roads. It's the state roads. It's the county roads. Those are the ones that suffer the most. Those are the ones that are tearing up new vehicles left and right. The bridges are falling down with people on them. It's happened. More than once. How many people have to die falling from bridges or get poisoned by a water supply or somehow negatively, permanently, horribly impacted by the environment before people got to realize you got to keep maintenance on this stuff? If you want to maintain food for the future, you've got to ensure that there's farmland to grow it on. If you want to maintain the farmland that you're growing on, you better treat it properly, else it will be barren. These are things that people figured out a long time ago. It's just that modern day people don't think about food coming from the farm. They think about food coming from the store. And that's another whole problem that's not marijuana related. Oh, don't get me on a tangent. If you get me on a tangent, you'll never get off the tangent. So what else is going on in the marijuana news? I got to get off this Scalia thing because it's just killing me. Where else were we at here? Here we go. So, other big news in the marijuana realm. Meet the marijuana industry's newest customers, dogs. Ha ha ha. We have to talk about this, and I'll even tie in a sponsor, the petpain.com. They're a sponsor of the program. You can go to petpain.com and check out all of the various and sundry forms. I think it's just one of Pet Pain drops. I don't think they have. I think they only do the drops at the petpain.com. But it's CBD oil is what it is. And Reason at reason.com says the marijuana industry's newest customers are dogs. Let me just play you what Reason has to say. If it's not too long, and if it doesn't make us watch a commercial first, because, you know, we got to... This is all dog training.
Most of the pet owners that are using the product are using it for separation anxiety, things like hip dysplasia and arthritis, mobility, pain, aging. A lot of aging dogs are using the product. And then we have some dogs that have epilepsy that use the product with great success. Some dogs with cancer that are also using the product. So it's a pretty wide range of conditions that can be addressed with CBD really successfully.
Juliana Carella is the owner of the San Francisco-based edibles company, Auntie Dolores. In 2013, she started up a new company that makes dog treats containing cannabidiol, also known as CBD, which comes from marijuana.
It's free of THC. There's no other psychoactive ingredients in the product, so it's totally free of anything that would get your dog high.
CBD has become readily available in most states with medical marijuana laws, and its effect on dogs is a positive yet little noticed result of weakening drug prohibition. Prior to 1996, the only way to get CBD was on the black market. It's not explicitly banned, but since it comes from the marijuana plant, no legitimate business would touch it.
Cannabis is a Schedule I narcotic, which means that is how this information has been strategically suppressed, in my opinion. I really feel like the research is about 80 years behind where it should be.
The research of CBD might have been hindered by archaic drug laws, but scientists and medical professionals are making up for lost time. With 76 scientists currently registered with the DEA for CBD research purposes, it seems as though the laws might finally be loosening for the CBD and for medical marijuana in general.
We've had a tremendous amount of feedback from customers, a tremendous amount, saying how, from just it being a subtle change to being very, very dramatic.
Heidi Hill is the owner of the Holistic Hound Pet Store in Berkeley, California. Her store sells CBD dog treats.
I describe Holistic Hound as being a health food store for dogs and cats. We only deal with dogs and cats right now. I've been surprised at how many people around here know about it. Many of them have medical marijuana cards and are already, using medical marijuana or CBDs for themselves. And so when they saw that we had the treatables, they were already on board because they already know.
While the CBD treats from treatables are available worldwide, federally CBD is still illegal, which leaves companies that make the palliative dog treats operate with some legal uncertainty.
Operating in that space is very tricky. Cannabis is still a Schedule I narcotic, so we still have all the restrictions that we had before, and until that changes, it's going to look like this for the time being. It would be great if they would deschedule cannabis as opposed to rescheduling it. It doesn't belong on the CSA list at all, in my opinion, so once that happens, then the research that's supposed to have been happening all this time will start to happen here in this country.
And you can go to petpain.com if you want to get some CBD products for your pets. Pet Pain drops. I can tell you that I used them successfully with both dogs and cats. It's recommended for all domestic animals for certain things, and it certainly can't hurt. Go to petpain.com and check that out. CBD for your dog or cat. And there's a lot of information about it on the internet. When we come back from the break, we've got other stuff in the cannabis news arena. I'll just give you a preview. As marijuana sales grow, startups step in the way for wary banks. That coming up next on the program. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
You're getting the full melt.
Promotional consideration provided by NoSmell.com, pioneering the storage market for cannabis users. The NoSmell patented bag technology offers users 100% smell-proof detection from even the most sophisticated of noses. NoSmell.com, so nobody knows. When placing your order for a NoSmell bag, make sure to use discount code FULLMELT and take 10% off the entire order. Learn more about NoSmell technology at NoSmell.com.
Young students are our future. They're eager to learn, eager to succeed, eager to make the world a better place. And they want to make it to school safely. Share the road, take care when passing, and always leave 3 feet between you and people on bikes. Bikes are legal road vehicles. We're all drivers.
When you need legal help, you don't want to guess at who's standing next to you in court. And when it comes to a medical marijuana defense, it's even smarter to partner with a lawyer before you need one. Based in Royal Oak, David Rudoy has a proven history of not being afraid to take your case all the way to the Supreme Court and win. Find the law offices of Rudoy Law
at RudoyLaw.com.
RudoyLaw.com is a quick reference on your rights concerning Michigan medical marijuana
and up-to-date news.
That's RUDOI Law.com. Call 248-935-9074 now and talk about your legal needs, because at RudoyLaw.com, we don't just stand up for you, we stand up with you.
If you're like us, your pets aren't just animals. They're members of your family. Pet Pain CBD hemp oil drops are great for aging as well as active dogs and cats. Some people are apprehensive about hemp treatments for pets. They ask us, what are you smoking? Absolutely nothing, and neither will your pet. Like other hemp-based products for humans, the allure is all of the benefits of cannabis without any of the high. The CBD oil has shown to rejuvenate the bones, joints, brain, stomach, eyes, and heart. And the drops contain absolutely no corn, wheat, soy, artificial colors and flavors, or preservatives. Pick some up today. Visit petpain.com or ask for Pet Pain at your local pet store. Petpain.com. CBD relief for your pet.
Hey, it's Steve Green for the Sweet Leaf in Flint, because now getting safe access to medical cannabis patients in Flint, Michigan is never more welcoming. Presenting the Sweet Leaf, a brand new patient experience bringing 12 carefully selected caregivers housed in 9 separate offices to distinctly assist you with their knowledge and reputation for excellent patient care. Classes and training coming soon in the large community room. Check it out in person, 400 South Door Highway, or call 810-259-2571. The Sweet Leaf Center in Flint, 810-259-2571. 571. It's the Full Melt Radio Show. Marijuana sales grow. Startups step up for wary banks.
It's been a long, bumpy ride sitting down.
CNBC says that if you're a startup company, better watch out. As a federal employee, he could not partake of the pot when Lamin Zarad was not at his job at a federal banking as a federal banking regulator in recent months. He was spending a lot of time at Denver's marijuana dispensaries. He was there instead to pinch the shops on a startup he had been working on in his free time and is making official this week after quitting his job as a bank examiner at the Office of Comptroller of the Currency, a division of the Treasury Department. Mr. Zarad's startup, Token, it's Tokken, is one of several recently created companies looking to solve one of the most vexing problems facing marijuana businesses in Colorado and several other states: the endless flow of dirty, dangerous, hard-to-track cash. That's right. The state of Colorado legalized marijuana for recreational use, of course, in 2014, joining several other states where the drug has been decriminalized in some form. But Visa and MasterCard will not process transactions for pot dispensaries, and most banks will not open accounts for the businesses, leaving dispensaries dealing with a constant influx of cash and nowhere good to put it. Token and other startups with names like Hyper and Kind Financial have been putting together software that helps banks and dispensaries monitor and record transactions with the long-term goal of moving transactions away from cash. Stephanie Hopper, the owner of Ballpark Holistic Dispensary in Denver, said the tech solutions could not come soon enough. This is amazing, this story. We are all kind of chomping at the bit, trying to figure out what to do, Ms. Hopper said. We're fighting so hard on so many fronts that taking one thing off of us would be such a relief. The array of attempted answers to Mrs. Hopper's problems underscore what a gray area the marijuana industry still occupies. Despite the various state laws legalizing it, marijuana is still listed by the federal authorities, of course, as a so-called Schedule I drug. Such drugs, which include also LSD and heroin, are deemed to have the highest potential for abuse. The Department of Justice has said that it will generally let states enforce their own laws on marijuana, and the arm of the Treasury Department responsible for enforcing money laundering laws has provided guidelines for banks that want to work with marijuana-related businesses, but federally regulated banks have generally refused to open accounts, and credit card companies have prohibited transactions from going across their networks. There are already several less savory ways of dealing with the cash problem. Some dispensaries open bank accounts under fake names. Mr. Zarad, the founder of Token, said that in his regulatory work he caught a number of these schemes when he was examining banks in Colorado. In a slightly more legitimate maneuver, some small companies have offered prepaid cards that can be used for purchases in dispensaries, though the legality of this is still unclear, according to CNBC. A few credit unions, they say, and small banks in Colorado have opened accounts for dispensaries, but they generally take on only a few marijuana customers each, and even they are still generally unable to process electronic payments. Ms. Hopper's one of the lucky dispensary owners to have a bank account, is still left doing much of her business in cash and sending it out covertly with employees who deposited at the bank, constantly worrying about their safety. We make sure it's never the same person, never the same time of day, she said. See, they got to switch it up so they can't be cased for robbery. This is a problem. Most of the startups trying to help with this problem are focused in one way or another on tracking every detail of every purchase in a more sophisticated way. Careful record keeping can answer the concerns of banks worried about violating anti-money laundering laws. The startups hope their software can allow banks to open up their accounts and their payment networks to cannabis business. Hyper, a 2-year-old company based in Arizona, has built software for banks that uses GPS to geolocate each purchase and prove it was done in an authorized dispensary. This has been enough to allow Hyper to raise more than $5 million from investors. Whoa. The California-based startup Kind Financial is offering software as well as hardware in the form of kiosks that can go inside the dispensaries. Customers can deposit cash into the Kind kiosk to pay for their purchase, removing one headache for the dispensary. Mr. Zarad's startup, Token, is younger than the others, but he's aiming to offer something new, an electronic payment system that will not rely on the credit card companies or debit networks, somewhat like PayPal or Venmo. Token will use the electronic money transfer system in the United States, known as the Automated Clearinghouse, or ACH, to move money from the bank account of a dispensary customer to Token's bank account. Token will then keep sub-accounts for each dispensary, making it unnecessary for the banks to deal directly with dispensaries. Mr. Zarad's confident he can stay on the good side of banks because of his experience as a regulator, and before that, in the financial industry. What a great idea. He's 36 years old, briefly worked as a financial advisor for Merrill Lynch after serving in the Marine Corps for 6 years. He took the job with the OCC, which regulates all national banks, in part because he spotted the opportunity in marijuana compliance and wanted to understand the financial system better. In his nearly 2 years with the OCC, Mr. Zarad was often on the road combing through the books of regulated banks. He said that his teams would not crack down on banks even if they were openly working with marijuana businesses, as long as they were tracking the transactions carefully. The problem cropped up when the banks did not take enough steps to prevent money laundering, the process of making illegally gained proceeds appear legal. Mr. Zarad then began working on Token in his free time, and a founding program partner, Tom Rao, who lives in North Carolina. The system they built will allow customers to make purchases with a Token app on their smartphone, kind of like you do, sort of like you do when you're paying for your Uber ride. So you don't do Uber transactions in cash. It's part of the safety sewn into the system. You can't rob the Uber driver because it's all in his phone. You can't get the cash out of that phone. The system will allow the customers to make purchases with Token on their app or on their smartphone, taking cash out of the equation. The special sauce that sets apart Token is that every transaction will be recorded on the ledger underlying the Bitcoin system, known as the blockchain. Because transactions on the blockchain are irrevocable, pot dispensaries and banks will have a reliable and complete record of all Token transactions, including the specifics of each transaction without requiring any bitcoins to change hands. A tiny portion of a bitcoin will be sent between token accounts in order to record the transaction on the blockchain. Now, that's a lot of technical stuff. But it seems like a great answer. Mr. Sherrod hopes that the transparency offered by Token's blockchain backbone will make banks feel comfortable opening up accounts for the startup. He's planning to approach some of the banks he previously regulated and is hoping that his background will convince them that he understands the compliance issues they're facing. By the way, CNN's reporting that with Ted Cruz, this is just breaking news from CNN. See, I might have lost it now. It doesn't allow me to, I don't know. Breaking news. Can't even do it. There. Oh, now it came back. So, oh, geez. I'm not trying to do all that right now. Never mind on the breaking news. It was just crap anyways. Finishing up this story. This is not someone who's just sitting around and had an idea. Mr. Zerad's hoping to have the software operational later this year and will soon begin raising funds from investors. Now that he's off the federal payroll, he'll also be able to enjoy the products peddled by the dispensaries, especially the edible marijuana products. I lean towards edibles. I just don't like smoking, he said. When I'm no longer employed, that'll be my occasional indulgence. Ha! Oh, see how the worm turns. Doesn't the worm turn? It does indeed. I'm glad you had a chance to join us today. Every day is new in this arena. When you're talking about marijuana news, there's always another story. There's more stories that there's just no time to get to today. And I don't cover all marijuana stories, just the ones that seem to be kind of important. I think all news stories are important to somebody somewhere. They wouldn't be news, would they? But we're a 1-hour program we've reached the end of. So I've got no choice but to say until tomorrow, when we'll bring you Thursday's show on the 18th of February. I hope that you enjoy your cannabis evening. Have a happy nightmare. No nightmares. Okay, enough marijuana analogies. We'll just see you tomorrow.
The Full Melt Show is a production of TFM Media.